Well, here I am again. I don't give up easily. I wanted to talk about something I think catchy, miracles. So that should get people interested. Even though I may maintain my average view, which is about half a minute, but as I said, I don't give up. Primarily because right now I feel that miracles have taken place in my life very recently and very clearly to me. And so I want to share for whoever is interested my experiences and my thoughts regarding miracles, which, as a person that has studied theology for over 50 years, and I have a doctorate in it, and I was a lawyer too, is something that I've thought about. The actual word miracle comes from the Latin mirror, which means I look with wonder, or I am, you know, in wonder, or sort of, fascinated maybe by what I have seen or what is appearing, etc. That's a very broad definition because people can be in wonder of many, many things. I suppose that the normal definition of a miracle would be something that goes beyond or violates the laws of nature. For example, if you were diagnosed with the type of illness that or malady, maybe a bone deformation or some other type of paralysis, atrophy of your body, your tissues, a limb, that doctors agree is incurable, will not improve, and it does improve. And I'm speaking in the context, for example, of Lourdes, of which I've studied quite a bit about Lourdes, and I've read books, old and new, regarding the miracles or the cures that cannot be naturally explained by medical doctors and therefore have been declared to be actual healings, miraculous healings, if you will. I don't know what the exact vocabulary is now, by a medical board, etc. And there was actually a very good 60 Minutes. You can probably Google that, which I will now just to experiment a little bit. Ed Bradley, 60 Minutes, Lourdes. And I bet you can get that without much trouble. So here you would have
hate wearing bras, then you might want to check this out.
Not exactly what I had in mind.
I'm a 34.
The Sanctuary of Our Lady of Lourdes, and this
With
was only about a year
pandemic
ago.
And
So
gruesome political
that's
season,
enough of
you'd
that.
be forgiven for giving up.
I hope another commercial didn't pop up. So anyway, that would be the classic miracle is something unexplainable. So that would be a very specific use of, and the normal use of the word miracle. And I think there's a whole gray area. For example, in my case, I'll talk about my case. As I've said in other videos, I was very depressed last year, 2023, and then I had a knee operation towards the end of the year, which really put me in bad shape. I was worried about my back. I was worried about my esophagus and many other things. And in a few months, after that, when I went through a very dark night of the soul, I found that I had lost 30 pounds, And I also began doing back exercises. And my back has not been an ailment for me or something I complain about for some time now. I can walk where I could not walk before. And I can clean my house better than I could do before. I prayed specifically for a miracle from Our Lady of Lourdes. This is a cloth that I bought in Rome that's very beautiful that I have outside my door. And to Bernadette, whose body is incorrupt, and if I don't forget, I'll go back to that in a second. But I actually specifically prayed for a miracle in the sense of a, kind of a, if not sudden, at least a drastic change that could not be expected without God or without grace, etc. And I believe that it has happened. I believe that grace working with nature, my losing weight, my back exercises, being part of it. In Spanish, we have a saying, a Dios rogando y con el mazo dando, praying to God while we hold the whatever instrument it is we are working with. So you need to put something of your own effort, I suppose. But nevertheless, I believe that the extent of the change for the better that I have undergone is not explainable simply because I lost weight and I do back exercises that are very simple and not, a big effort. If you looked at my MRIs and if you talked to my orthopedic surgeon, he would say I was a candidate. That's what he told me. He hasn't seen me since. I was a candidate for surgery in a couple of places because I'm not going to get into it now. I could pull it up, but if you saw what kind of problems I have in my back, they are significant. And in fact, I couldn't walk. I couldn't walk more than 50 yards maybe, or 100 I couldn't walk. And which I was a great walker in the past. So I believe, I'm open-minded. I'm a believer, practicing Catholic, open-minded enough to pray for a miracle and to actually expect it without getting obsessed about it, because it's really if God wills type of thing. I don't insist. I wouldn't insist on some sort of a miracle, but I believe that it happened, and therefore, I do believe that miracles can happen. Now, I wanted to get into the theological aspects of this a little bit, and maybe I won't have too much to say, and it'll be a shorter video. But if you go to my website, BibleExplainer.com, Bible-explainer.com, which I just renewed and it's up and running. It has not gone viral either. Under theological writings, you'll see Reflections on God's Providence, which was actually published by the Josephinum. The Josephinum, theological journal. And there, what I basically get into is that faith is a perception of reality that is interpreted, or faith interprets what is perceived along theological lines. So, you can think of yourself as, for example, dealing with other people. And if you're St. John of the Cross, you would say, that you come into contact with others so that in many ways they can sculpt you. In other words, all the negative friction we have with others is meant to improve our character, exercise our virtues, etc. Um, right now, for example, I am going through a very peaceful, tranquil, and joyous Easter season in a way that I have probably never experienced in my 70 years. And with some frequency, I say, God, let me consolidate, let me get stronger, because I know challenges and trials will occur again. And the desire would be that these times of consolation prepare you and serve to help you when the times of tribulation come. That's one of the maxims or one of the great, truths of the spiritual life is that God has a pedagogy whereby he consoles us and regales us, if you will, treats us very nicely. And if he only did that, we would get lazy and fat, spiritually fat. Fat heart is an unperceiving heart, etc. Our guards would go down. As happened to me, about 10 years ago, and I lost a job partly because of my complacency. But God then also gives you tribulation, and that tries you and wakes you up and makes you react and makes you take measures to improve. If it was all tribulation, you would be crushed. So God has this mysterious alternation, tribulation, consolation, and supposedly he's given each of us a cross uh, according to our measure or according to our need. So that would be something we accept on faith. But the whole idea of God really has to do with another power, a higher power, as the AA people would say, an other who exists and loves us, has created us, and to whom we turn for help, as almost everyone does. The saying that there are no atheists in the trenches, I think, is true in the sense that almost everyone, at some point in an extreme situation, will instinctively turn to God. I'm reading about the storm god in the ancient Near East, and I'm kind of getting some real evidence as to how weather and both the frightening nature of storms plus the beneficent uh, qualities of rain, etc., were of great importance, and this resulted in creation of symbols, if you will, regarding the bull and regarding other animals or even human type representations of God, the mother goddess, etc. And this is kind of like something I'm interested in, how religion develops. So that um, what is a miracle, depending on how you define it, if we admire something or are in wonder as to something that happened, for example, myself, I am in wonder of the change that I have undergone physically and mentally and even spiritually. And it's just not just me, but even back in the early days of my convalescence, people were astonished that I was recovering well from the knee operation. Then I think they were astonished at how low my spirits, dangerously low my spirits were. And now, especially with my voice, they keep saying, you sound great, you look great. And I've done next to nothing, in my opinion. I lost the weight without trying. It just happened because my esophagus was so bad that I was not eating and eating a lot less. And, I didn't drink coffee, didn't drink alcohol. That could have helped too. But nevertheless, the change is an object of wonder, and in that sense meets the definition of miracle. So that what I tried to do in this reflection on God's providence is, I'm trying to get this thing, is to discuss that we have to assume that God is involved in everything. That he's not just sitting there in heaven and saying, oh, I think I'm going to intervene there. Oh, I heard a prayer over here, so let me, do something about that. They pushed the right button and now I'm going to act. We don't know how God acts. We know he's spirit, which, if you could look at the word spirit, has to do with breath and wind and things, like that. So even saying God is spirit is a metaphor that doesn't really apply probably to God. We can't really say anything about God except according to our limited human conceptualization capacities. But we can say that from the faith, he's involved in everything. He still works, Jesus says in John 5. He sustains the world, etc. Something like that. And therefore, maybe one thing is no more a miracle than another, you know. Um, but what we're talking about, trying to discuss, is things that are really unexplainable. My case could probably easily be explained, just like demonic possession is a top subject that, if you look at what needs to be, to exist for there to be a bona fide case of demonic possession, it's very, very difficult. Speaking in language of supernatural strength, etc., etc., etc. I've never, really seen anything like that. But you still remain open to the idea that that it can happen. So that regarding, miracles, I just lost my train of thought with some noise that I was hearing. Regarding miracles, there's like I said, a blurred lines, and I think in Lourdes you have real cases of bone and hard, parts of the body that experience a change that can be demonstrated with X-rays and things like that. That is totally unexplainable to the medical board, and they both say that medical science can't explain it. One, and two, that given perhaps other factors of pleading and intercession, etc. I don't know that the medical board gets into that, but what they present to ultimately the bishop or a prelate, a church official, is we have these set of facts, totally unexplainable medical change, and there are other, maybe the process of investigation includes, did you pray to Bernadette, or did you pray in this way or that, or whatever. And then you finally get, and there's only been maybe, I don't know how many, 70 or 80 out of, a tiny percentage. You could watch the 60 Minutes program on that. Only a tiny percent are declared to be interventions by God. And that, the way a theologian would look at that and say, well, these are ways that God has of sort of reassuring us that he's there, and that he can intervene, and that things can change in unexpected ways. Now, we know that faith can be explained to a large extent as a human adaptative mechanism to carry on, to continue living and thriving with positive thoughts and belief and a mission and the idea that somebody is helping you, etc. We can, think of all those things, and I actually have, which I think is going to be published. I have a contract to publish it, God, an essay, um, where I talk about, did we invent God? How has God worked for us throughout history? But God has been a holy war God, or God has been, a consoler, etc. Theodicy, which is the problem of how to justify a God who is all powerful, all loving, with all the suffering and injustice in the world. Then the nature and activity of God, personal experience, faith and prayer. Is there a true religion, and the unanswered silence of God? So I explored those things, and so we know that we have to watch our wishful thinking tendency and to believe things that are not established. But I think part of the faith is to accept that not everything can be proven, and that we have to accept things. And they say this in the movie, the Bernadette movie, very effectively, The Song of Bernadette, when the doctor is trying to discuss the miraculous cure of this infant who was about to die, and the mother runs in the movie, puts him in the newly built reservoir for the water, and the priest is there, Father Pomian, the assistant pastor of Lourdes, and the priest says to the doctor, in our faith there are many things that cannot be explained, and we accept them, something like that. In other words, a person of faith does not insist on proof for everything, because that's actually against the very nature of faith, which is believing where there is no proof. Prestat fide supplementum quod sensum defectui. If I said it right, Thomas Aquinas' I think Pangelingua hymn says, let faith make up for, supply what is lacking to the sense perception, so that with the absence of proof, faith can, done the right way, can give us the clarity that we need on something that cannot be totally exhausted by scientific analysis. I'll give you a little story of faith and wonder. I wanted to go to Rome to study theology, biblical theology. I couldn't find any housing. And then all of a sudden, I thought miraculously, a priest friend of mine found on a bulletin board an apartment that turned out to be where I lived for 2 years. As we say in Spanish, bueno, bonito y barato. It was a good one, it was pretty, and it was cheap. So that's a great, great find. Before all that happened, somebody had given me a photocopy of the Virgin, the one you see here, but a black and white bad photocopy of an even earlier version of this, before they removed the crowns and other things they had put on her. Even though this one has a crown, the other one has a bigger crown, the prior version that had been painted over. And I read what it said, and it said Madonna della Strada, and even then I knew enough Italian to know that meant the Lady of the Street, Our Lady of the Street. And so I actually said, the way my life is going, I may wind up on the street. But nevertheless, I got that great apartment. I went to Rome. I was doing great. My dream had come true. And lo and behold, the 24th of May, the following year, I had been there now, 8 months or so, maybe 9. I went to the Church of Jesu, the Jesuit Mother Church, found it full. I was surprised that it was so full. And I asked around, what's going on. They said this is the feast of the Madonna dell'Estrada. This is the feast of Our Lady of the Street, or of the Way. And these are all taxi drivers and street sweepers. Their unions and just the people that do that work are here for their patrons. When it was over, the Mass was over, and I was there. I looked around. I don't think anybody said she's there or not, but maybe they did. And lo and behold, I find the original painting behind that photocopy somebody had given me. This is my own picture, by the way, and I'm almost sure, not sure, but I know the other image very well, and I believe that this one was already in existence in 1996. I may be wrong, or 1997 when I went and saw her. I took this picture some years later, not 97. Now that's an example of, is that a miracle or not? I mean, God was working there. I believe he was getting me to go to Rome after going through a lot of tribulations and humiliations, trust me. And that's another story. When I was desperately looking for housing in Rome, I met some priests. Make a long story short, they said, I think we have a place for you and we're going to celebrate. And we've been invited to the Biblicum, the great biblical institute, where I wound up taking some 8 courses. And we're going to celebrate. So one of the priests says, meet me in front of the Gregorian University where I was to enroll. And we'll go across the street to the Biblicum to join the dinner, because you will be our guest at this big dinner of Bible scholars. And I show up at the Gregorian, and the priest comes, and this is what he says to me basically: sorry, we didn't get that place for you, and I gotta go because I have a dinner to go to. And I remember, I don't think I can find it now, but I remember just walking away and looking up at the name of the street. People that know this area of Rome know what I'm talking about. Via dell'Umiltà, Humility Way. Is that a coincidence, or what is that? Well, the person of faith is going to say, what an appropriate name of a street after what just happened to me. And that is what I'm talking about a little bit as far as the perception of miracles. I would not be surprised if an MRI showed changes in my back. Just as I went to a neurologist for my neck, and he says, you need an operation. I didn't get the operation. I waited 3 years. I went for another MRI, went back to the same neurologist, and he goes, oh, you're well, you don't need an operation. Apparently the herniated discs had shrunken back with age. Now my neck is hurting me a little bit again. Influences, affects my ulnar nerve down my right arm. But I wouldn't be surprised if physical evidence of what one is perceiving were to be presented or available. So it's a very mysterious topic, this topic of miracles. And I believe that probably the biggest lesson is to avoid credulity of the easy and superficial kind, which many people are interested in that. I mean, even I bought a lottery ticket this morning, a Fantasy 5, where the odds are a lot better than the big one. I don't want a lot of money. I prefer just to have more of a nest egg. So I buy it not expecting to win, but hoping to win. And if I did win, I would say God wants me to have more of a nest egg. If I don't win, I would say God wants me to accept, um, the contingencies of life, the uncertainties of life, the threat of poverty, etc., being on the street. I've already had that fear of being on the street, and it came out wonderfully. Does everything come out wonderful? For the person of faith, it does, because being close to God is the greatest happiness there is. As I've been saying in these videos, I'm taking the Prayer and Life workshop of Father Larrañaga, Tov, T-O-V, which is the word good in Hebrew. That's not why it's called Tov. It's Taller de Oración y Vida, workshop of life, of prayer and life. And one of the prayers, I think number 4 in the book Encuentro, is, and as a friend of Jesus, he wants you to share his sufferings and joys. Not just the sufferings and not just the joys. So that when we conform ourselves to Jesus, as St. Paul says in Philippians, we wish to have such closeness to him and communion with him, sharing, koinonia in Greek, fellowship, and that includes, as Paul says in Philippians 3:6, to be found in him. And then in verse 10, and to know him and the power of his resurrection and the koinonia or communion with his sufferings, until or to the point of or unto, for the purpose of becoming similar to him in his death, trying to attain to the resurrection from the dead. This process of dying to the old vice-filled person into a new person who is virtue-filled. Bad habits, vices, become good habits, virtues. And so the idea of miracle, I think in its broadest sense, must be the sense of faithful admiration, looking at with esteem, with a sense of wonder, at things that we see, experience, people, actions, events, nature, whatever, that sort of jar us into contact with this world that is hidden, but that so many of us are enthralled with, which is the divine world, the world of God. And I know people like angels. They like to think of angels. And I believe in angels. I mean, I believe in what the Roman Catholic Church teaches. And I use the expression that I learned in theology, and I think I'm using it right. The obsequium fidei means I offer faith instead of, hold on to doubt. I offer my faith to believe the whole panoply, if you will, which I believe means the whole range of weapons that the church presents. The exaltation of Mary, the Assumption of Mary, etc., as part of a whole panorama, if you will, of things that are like a delicious meal. No one needs a total Chinese meal with 100 items, But the idea of the abundance and the richness and diversity and how they supplement and complement and overwhelm you in the end, I think that's what's behind, just like Baroque and the Baroque uh, architecture in churches, etc. Even this Christ that was given to me as a present. This was a minor miracle. I went to Mexico and I visited my Dominican friends, and a dear friend of mine said to me, I have a gift for you. And it's all wrapped up. He was a great rapper. He wrapped his letters like they were, fortresses or something. And he says, do not open it because you're going to, damage it on the plane, etc. Open it when you get home. And when I got home, I found this, a miniature, but the miniature is about, 2 feet high or more, of the big statue they had in the convent. They actually had maybe two of them. And he gave me the artist's much smaller version of that as a gift. You could say that's a miracle. I know he saw me as a man who was familiar with the cross, and I know that he liked to associate me, whether it's reading Isaiah 53 in Good Friday or with a gift like this. So these are all uh, miracles in a broad, non-technical sense. And finally, let's get back to Bernadette. This is not my picture. They don't allow pictures to be taken of her where she lies incorrupt. But I've been there twice, and this ignorant peasant girl says she saw the Virgin, was stalwart and unflinching with all the attacks, etc. Entered religious life, was stricken with, I think, tuberculosis of the bone, and her knee was very bad. My knee was very bad. I thought of her a lot. Of course, I had a knee replacement. She did not. She died at the age of 35. Her feast is in 2 days. The anniversary of her death in 1879. So that April 16th is St. Bernadette, along with another 35-year-old at death, Benoit Joseph Labre, another French guy about a century before Bernadette. But Bernadette dies, and without any, care taken, her body has remained incorrupt, except for some discoloration of the skin that they put some wax on it or something. If you the sisters themselves in the convents, and there's not many of them left. There may be one, Nevers, where, like I said, I've been twice. They don't make any big deal about the body. In fact, they sort of cast doubt on it. But nevertheless, we would consider that, I would, a sign from God physically establishing Bernadette's credentials as a truth-telling, believable saint who claims to have seen the Blessed Virgin and who also discovered the spring. I think that's one of the findings of the investigation. She alone discovered this previously unknown spring, which has healed so many people. Again, I would urge you to look up the Ed Bradley 60 Minutes. Beautiful, with a specific case of a cure. A sister, a religious sister, who couldn't walk and was documented, having to wear a brace and all this kind of stuff, prayed to Bernadette, etc., and was healed. So that if you choose not to believe that, it's a choice you're making without perfect proof. You may choose to believe you have perfect proof. If you choose to believe it, You choose it, I think, knowing you don't have perfect proof. The fact that you don't insist in this control thing of perfect proof is what I call, again, the obsequium fidei. You offer up faith as a gift to God, if you will. I believe you without having seen you, you know, etc. And I think at 40 minutes, I've said enough about miracles and what I think about them.